everyone. I'm Rebecca Weber, and this is your Amac podcast, Better for America. If you haven't yet done so, just hit that subscribe button so that you never miss a Better for America episode. Today, we are honored to have with us just a really great person, a great man. This guest is someone who has served in a variety of offices and positions from the private sector, where he cultivated aviation, energy management, and extensive business knowledge, and now to the public sector, where he serves in our country's government as treasurer for the state of Kansas and currently serves as congressman for Kansas's 4th district. That's Congressman Ron Estes. Congressman Estes has become a thoughtful, detail-oriented, and highly effective member of vital committees, helping to make the U.S. government more accountable to the American people. So in everything from tax policy and trade to military support for our veterans, and accountability to the American people. He serves in a variety of high-level posts and is currently the only state treasurer on the vaunted House Ways and Means Committee. Someone who grew up on a farm, he is truly multifaceted and seems to really be like the embodiment of much of what is so great and best about America. So for all of you listening, I'm thrilled to welcome Congressman Ron Estes from the 4th District of Kansas. Congressman, welcome.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you today and be able to reach out and talk a little bit about some of the issues that are so important to our country and that your members have such an interest in.
Congressman, you're so well versed in so many areas of policy, from domestic and business to tax and security. So I want to start in one area and then move through some others. But our AMAC members, I think, will learn a lot here and benefit from your analysis and predictions. So I want to start on something that affects us all: the way in which the federal government, and Congress in particular, affects our lives on the economic side. The federal government seems to be stumbling badly on fiscal policy, regulation, and we're seeing it sort of line up to hinder economic growth. And we're currently facing such high inflation, and we know it's driven by mass federal spending. We're facing high energy costs at the pump and at the heating. Our heating oil bill is going up. And this is all due to Biden abandoning energy independence. Now, you have been a leading voice on tax policy. You've passed landmark legislation in this area, and also for rolling back burdensome regulations. My question to you, Congressman, is how can average Americans get their government to stop spending money we do not have on programs that we do not want, that are supported by taxpayer and debt that we can't afford? These things affect average everyday Americans, and we know that we have a tax policy that hits average Americans very, very, very hard. What is it exactly that we can do? And you know, we can just keep spending money, but we don't have that money. We're borrowing money from our grandchildren.
Yeah, it really is. You hit the nail on the head with a lot of the issues that we need to address and we need to resolve at the federal level, instead of digging in and making things worse. You know, inflation is such a terrible scourge for people. I mean, whether you're a worker that gets a paycheck, or whether you're retired and if you have a pension or Social Security, having to depend on a fixed amount every month, and you can't control the increases every month. So it's such a terrible impact on people as they try to go about their daily business. And the pure nature of inflation and the rising prices comes from too much money chasing the same amount of goods and services. And what's happened the last couple of years, and I'll make an argument, we needed to spend some money right when COVID first hit. But ever since then, it seems to be kind of a delight in Washington to be out and saying that they spent this hundreds of billions of dollars on this project and that project. And we've got to stop that. You were correct in terms of saying that we are spending money today on our lifestyle, and we're basically borrowing it from our grandchildren and great-grandchildren in some cases, as bad as it is now. We just recently went over $30 trillion in debt for the United States, much faster than was expected. And it's primarily because when President Biden came into office, you know, he wanted an accomplishment in the first 100 days that he's in office. And so they pushed through a $1.9 trillion, basically they called it American Rescue Plan, but really it was just additional spending. And then additional programs that they've passed last year added. So the total in the last year spent over $3.1 trillion. And that's resulted in inflation. And you combine that with the bad policies. When the first day he was in office, he actually canceled out the Keystone XL pipeline in terms of a way to have energy independence, and also prohibited leasing of land on federal lands for oil and gas development. And what we've seen since then is drastically escalating prices, and that hurts us all. I mean, if you don't have the money left over at the end of the month to buy the food and the clothing that you want for your kids or for yourself, because you've had to spend it on gas prices, it really does have a long-term effect on people, and it's purely because of policies and bad decisions that are being made in Washington.
Yeah, and that reminds us all that it's the people that we vote into office that are making these bad decisions and putting these bad policies in place. And so for those listening, they get it. They've got to get out and vote. Their vote matters, their vote counts, and we've got to be sure that we're electing people who are fiscally conservative and understand the long-term threat that our growing national debt has on this generation and on future generations. So thank you for helping to unpack that a little bit, but we agree with you there. Thank you, Congressman. I do want to turn to another area where you have been a leader and really where we need leadership. You're the son of a veteran, and we have seen many veterans within the Amac family. We're very active in supporting our veterans and also the kind of military necessary to secure our country and preserve our national security. And you have been such a strong supporter of veterans, the military, and national security. So let me narrow this question a little bit, but break it into maybe three parts. A, what can we do to help our veterans? So we do want to assure that we have a strong military. We see rising international threats. But how do you assess some of those threats, especially China, Russia, and Iran? Veterans, our military is so important. And of course, these are the threats that they face. So how do you assess those issues from where you sit?
Yeah, the world really is a dangerous place, and we can't forget that. As much as we'd like to think that we could live in a civilized society and that people would share the same sense of values of having freedom and liberty and opportunity, there are individuals in the world that don't want that. I mean, the leadership in China, leadership in Russia and Iran, North Korea, just to name four of the really bad actors around the world. I mean, they want to be tyrants. They want to be dictators. They want to control things. Unfortunately, there's a few people in Washington that think they want to control things as well too. So we could continue to have better civics classes to help within the United States. But the recognition around how bad the world is, we need to continue to have that strong military, and because they support our country. I mean, they help make sure the United States is secure in that process. And one of the things that doesn't get talked about on that is energy independence. When we were energy independent, particularly during the Trump administration, we didn't see Russia threatening to invade Ukraine. We didn't see Iran attacking Israel, because what having that independence within the United States means that our foreign policy can be better managed, better controlled, because they know they can't threaten us. They know they can't overrule us. So that actually helps our military, helps our defense by having smart domestic policy through that. We've all heard stories, talking about how do we support our veterans? How do we support the folks that have given their time and energy and effort, and their families have had to put things on hold. We've heard stories over the last 8, 10, 15 years around the VA system and how it's not necessarily treating veterans, and the waiting list and some of the false data. And so in the last 5 years, we've actually put a couple of pieces of legislation through Congress to help provide not just support for the VA as an entity and an organization, but also giving veterans more choice. The VA Choice and the VA Mission Act helps those veterans when they get their treatments, whether it's due to military issues and injuries, or whether it's just due to their normal life issues that we need to support our veterans. Having the opportunity to meet with your local doctor instead of having to drive into a VA hospital. In Kansas, we have We're a big state. We don't necessarily have a lot of population in all areas of the state. So you could drive 4 and 5 hours from your home in Western Kansas to a VA hospital here in Wichita. And instead of having to do that on a regular basis for checkups, we wanted to make sure that they had the opportunity to do that with their local doctor for the routine checkups and make their life easier instead of having to travel as much. And actually, it helps support the hometown doctor as well.
That is fabulous, and I love to hear that because these veterans are so important, and choice is always better. Giving people that free choice, especially as it relates to their health. So thank you so much, Congressman, because that really is wonderful to hear about the action that's been taken in support of our great veterans. So I appreciate that. Um, our AMAC members are always very eager to hear what is really happening, and from those especially who are really fighting the good fight. So let me use that as a segue and ask you about another good fight, if you will. It's a moral fight we seem to be having in this country, and one in which the Supreme Court may ultimately be involved in. Maybe they're already involved, but I'm alluding to the issue of abortion. Notably, you are a thoughtful voice on this issue, and recently were involved in securing pro-life guidelines for the Title X program. Can you tell us a little bit about that? And perhaps if you could share a little bit where you think the Supreme Court may be headed on this issue and whether the Democrats in Congress will accept the Supreme Court's legal review of this issue. Our over 2 million AMAC members are in full support of life and the sanctity of life. And here at AMAC, we believe in the sanctity of life and offering protection to the unborn in the womb. So I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, that's when you look back, our country was founded in order to support life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. And what can be more tied into life than being able to support an unborn child? And so, being able to fight back against some of the abortion on demand societies and the thought process that's going on is so important. Congress set up years ago, back in the 70s, the Title X program, which basically was to use federal taxpayer money to help provide family planning services, basically help some of the low income, maybe some disadvantaged folks have good health practices. Unfortunately, over the years, it was distorted into providing abortions, and that's not a good health practice. And so we really pushed hard on let's stop that, trying to do that legislatively as well as through the regulatory effort, and we've been very successful. Unfortunately, with President Biden coming into office a year and a half ago, the Democrats have really started to push towards let's eliminate all of the good pro-life provisions that have been around for decades. In our appropriations for the last 50 years, almost 50 years, we've been a prohibition against using federal dollars to fund abortions. And the Democrats, as they've gone through the appropriations process, are trying to kick that out to say, no, we should be using taxpayer dollars to fund abortions. And that's an issue that we're standing up for. It's caused problems within the appropriations process this year, but we're pushing back and we're saying that's not a route that we should go as a country, that we should take our taxpayer dollars and use them to kill unborn children.
Yeah, it really is. It's quite shocking to me that Biden did so many things to reverse the good work that Donald Trump was doing, and people only need to look at the record and decide for yourself if you think that those are in the best interest of preserving our freedoms. And like you said, it's all about life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And if we take away the right to life before you even have a chance, really. It just doesn't seem right, feel right, and we know in our hearts that it's very wrong. So we continue to pray in that area. Congressman, thank you again. Let me ask you a few questions tied to where the country is as a whole. We look at Congress and we see mass spending, but we also see this incredibly low approval rating. And now 30 Democrat members are retiring. We see a president with popularity in the 30s, a vice president with even less supporters. And the president seems really objectively frail and certainly weak. And then we see foreign leaders, recently Russia's Putin, China, Iran, North Korea, all seeming to threaten the White House. And many Americans really feel that this is a perilous time. How do you see these threats, as well as the congressional and White House weaknesses? How do you think some of these things will end? Could this president regain some strength?
Yeah. Yeah, it really is. We want our best and brightest to be in the White House and to serve in Congress. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem that we've got that right now. President Biden has stumbled out of the gate, from day one in terms of some of the decisions that he's made in his administration. Whether it's ranging from the root cause causing the inflation that's happening out there, causing the whole debacle in Afghanistan and the
Mm.
surrender there to the Taliban and giving up our military base before we'd actually gotten all of our civilian and our federal employees from the State Department out of the country. And it just one crisis after another. Basically, I mean, they've allowed the borders to be open and invited, and that's the message that's being sent to other countries, that President Biden is inviting everybody to come into the country. I saw a video earlier this week about showing the Border Patrol agents who should be guarding the border, and actually they were acting in more like welcoming escorts, helping the illegal immigrants coming across the border out of the river and onto dry land into the United States. And then as we've seen, they take them then and care for them. We should be sending a message that you shouldn't be coming to the United States, and that that's a strength that comes from the White House, comes from a good, strong president. The things that President Trump did, and unfortunately, President Biden threw a lot of those out just because they'd been done by President Trump. The Remain in Mexico policy, until you were proven that you were entitled to amnesty in the United States, was a workable policy. And instead of having hundreds of thousands of people coming into the country every month, the number was down and be a more manageable during the last 2 years of President Trump's term. So it makes danger for our country to see the president so weak, and to see members of Congress who aren't working to how do we support life, liberty, and freedoms within the United States. I mean, that's the key thing around when you swear an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. You should be able to stand for the values that have led our country for the last 240 plus years, and that doesn't happen often enough. We're not a China. We're not a Cuba. We're not a Venezuela, even, where you have a socialist government that comes in and actually takes the value in your country and ruins that and hurts the citizens of your country. We need to stand up more for what are good for our citizens within the United States. How do we make sure that we provide them the freedoms and the liberty that they can live the lives that they want to live?
Yeah, I mean, it is certainly the rest of the world perceives Biden's weakness and sees it, certainly. We here at AMAC are concerned that this could lead to, a foreign adversary to act in a very rash way, and that could trigger a whole new set of new risks. So I think the American people are recognizing that we need to lead, peace through strength. And if we don't have the strength to back up what we say and what we mean, then that results in a lot of negative fallback. And so I appreciate that candor. Thank you so much, Congressman. I do want to work into one more area, an area that you are an expert in, and one that seems to get very little attention. In the end, while most Americans do not want socialism in this country, and we do not want excess spending, we do not want canceled speech or canceled worship, and we resist federal heavy-handedness, but we do want our core institutions, from the Supreme Court and the Congress and the executive, we want them to function. Our members want a constitutional government that respects the Constitution but works and does its basic job on time, that budgets, compromises. We want limited government, not more of it. Now, my question to you is, in the private sector, you created streamlining operations, and you improved delivery to customers and you reduce costs. Is there any chance that using ideas that worked in the private sector, we could actually get our government to become more streamlined, better at delivery of, on the things that must be federal, but also less costly, and a less of a burden on the private sector? Is that the reform or the kind of reform that perhaps we could see in the next Congress or in 2024?
It would be great if we could get through more of that done. I mean, one of my background in the private sector before I ran for office was how do we make things more efficient? How do we have a focus on who the end customer was and what their needs were? And that's what I tried to do when I was in the treasurer's office and put that focus of what's the constituent really need, as opposed to what may make it easier for us to streamline the activities within the office. And so that was really the focus that I had. There's a role for the federal government, but it should be limited. It should be small. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people that think big government's better, and so that's a lot of the battles that we have is, the struggle to spend more money to make government bigger. Yeah, it may be good at buying individuals' votes, but it doesn't meet what the purpose of the government is. I mean, the government's here to serve us, the people. I mean, that was the way it was created. That was what our founding fathers wanted, was they did not want a huge government. They saw how you could become dictatorial and tyrannical through that process. And so that was the whole process there. One of the problems we have on the legislative side is when we go through and write up a bill for a legitimate problem, we tend to, the lawmaker writing that tends to have blinders on, and they just look at that particular problem. And so they create a new program that actually focuses on that. And instead they don't look at, well, there's 20 other programs out there. Maybe they're in the same agency, maybe they're in a different agency, but they're really targeting the same problem or similar problems. And so we need to spend more time as we look at legislation is how do we consolidate these? How do we look at what are the functions of government, and even if there's some things that maybe partially done in the Labor Department, partially is done in the Commerce Department, let's make sure that they're working together instead of having two separate bureaucracies that focus on doing something that's a similar role. And so that's a piece that we need to look at. We were actually talking about that earlier this week. We were having a meeting talking about the Republican Study Committee, which is a large group of conservative members. And we work each year to build a budget to bring forth. And our ultimate goal is to try to build a budget that we can get passed that will ultimately balance through for the federal government. And so that we don't continue to have increasing our deficits and increasing our debt for the country. And as we were talking about that, the approach that we're taking is to look at what are those functions within government, and how do we work to make those more streamlined and more consistent, and figure out a better way to balance and budget for those.
That is so smart. As a businesswoman, I wear a number of different hats, and I've done a number of things over the years. That is precisely what we look to do each and every day is make sure that, for example, somebody in the marketing department is talking to the people in the development or IT department, because you can have multiple people working on the same projects. And boy, when you recognize how to streamline and put simple measures in place, productivity goes up, and people feel accomplished and can get a lot more work done. And it seems like such common sense. Congressman, I think there ought to be like a rule that unless you've been in business for a certain period of time or ran a business or ran something, having that background is so vital, I think, and important, needed in Washington. So it is wonderful to hear that you've got that background expertise and that when you approach things, you see them in a very common sense way. I appreciate this feedback and affirmation that things need to be streamlined, and it looks like you're doing, working towards that. So thank you.
Yeah, it really is one of those things that unfortunately so many people, both in the bureaucracy, the different agencies, and even in some cases elected officials, they've never run a business, they've never run an organization. They've always been a staff member either in a non-government entity or government supported entity, or staffer for a legislative program. And their view of the world is, well, we're successful if we get more money budgeted for us each year. They don't view the mindset that what's the what's the goods we're providing? What's the service we're providing? And how are we doing better at that? And by the way, how do we do it without spending as much money? And that's a
Right.
piece that we need to talk about so much more and highlight that over and over again.
Well, thank you for that. I have one last question for you today, Congressman. What do you think we're going to see in Biden's State of the Union address? Do you expect um, to hear a lot about COVID? What's very interesting is here in New York, we're located here on Long Island. We're hearing a lot of these blue states. The governors are finally lifting mask requirements. Part of a number of people said to me, "Oh, they're doing that so Biden has a good story to tell when he gets up on March 1st to say, hey, look, we've beat back COVID." Uh, what do you think to that? And really, what kind of message do you think he'll deliver?
Yeah, I've been fairly disappointed that President Biden over the last year plus has talked a lot about the things that we value in the country, but his actions haven't delivered that. So I would anticipate that his message is going to be talking about focusing on making comments around things that they've been successful at, when in reality the facts don't back that up.
Mm.
It's kind of interesting that you've talked about a lot of the blue state, the Democrat governors that are out lifting mandates and mask mandates. Actually, I think it's not necessarily tied to the State of the Union. I think it's tied to this is an election year. So if
Ah,
you're a Democrat governor and you're up for reelection, you want to talk about how you freed and provided opportunity for citizens in your state. And in reality, they're seeing that we're fed up. I mean, the facts are coming out that cloth masks don't provide any real protection to individuals, and that unless everybody's wearing an N95 mask, and then that really works if you're in a medical setting where there's really a strong need for that. But what we're seeing, a lot of these blue state governors coming back out now because it's an election year, and they're seeing that the public doesn't support those positions. That's the same thing that President Biden's seen when with his super low approval rating, is because he was selected to put some things in that he said on the campaign trail, and now he's backed up on so many of those during the past year.
he really has. It seems that the left wants to rule their way, and if they don't get their way, they want to ruin America. So here at AMAC, we've been talking a lot about their rule or ruin strategy and how that really, American people are waking up. They're recognizing, we see what happened in Virginia, all the talk about critical race theory, and parents saying, I have a right to know what's being taught to my child. I have a right to hear about these extracurricular activities that are just really awful and a form of emotional abuse, I think. The kinds of programs that some teachers are looking to bring into schools. And I love teachers. I think we've got a dozen, millions of great teachers that have served our country over, decades. I myself was very blessed to have some great teachers, but these unions, boy, they've got a stronghold in that area. And for everyone here listening, we've got some really great articles on this particular issue on our website at amac.us. So I encourage people to get more information on a lot of the things that I'm talking with Congressman Estes on. You can find a lot more information if you go to amac.us or download the AMAC News app. Congressman, this has been just such an honor and really nice to have you here. Love to hear your perspective. We need good people like you in Congress helping us preserve the great liberties and the things that make this country so great. So thank you for your time and your willingness to share with us all of your views and your seasoned perspective.
Great. Well, great. Thank you, Rebecca. I appreciate the opportunity. I mean, I always love to talk about freedom and liberty and what the things that the American exceptionalism and just American know-how and ingenuity can bring forward and do. And that's the piece that we ought to continue to do more of. It ought to be at the federal level as well as the state level. And so that's what I plan to continue to try to do that.
Well, thank you. You are doing that. So thank you for your time. And I want to thank everyone listening for tuning in today. If you haven't downloaded that app, go ahead and do it because you can get this show right there on your smartphone and you can track breaking news. So make sure to hit that subscribe button, follow, like, and share wherever you are on social media. Until next time, everyone, I'm Rebecca Weber. This is your podcast, Better for America. Thank you for being here. God bless you and have a great day, everyone.
You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by Amac, the Association of Mature American Citizens. To learn more about Amac and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.